because I have a bit to cover and only 25 minutes to do it. So I'm going to be talking about how to build your first JavaScript AI agent. I have a whole bunch of code snippets I'm probably going to walk you through, so just be aware of that. To give you a little bit of context on what I'm going to be talking about, this is going to be like the really fundamental ways that you can connect your JavaScript code to an LLM. And then I do get into some MCP and tools later on, but that's it. So if you're looking for like deep knowledge on how to do something specific and you've already been building AI agents, this probably isn't going to teach you a whole lot. But what I've found is I've talked to people on the JavaScript Jabber podcast and just people out there in general, is that a lot of people have this feeling that AI agents are tricky, they're complicated, they're hard to put together. And the reality is it's pretty simple. You're making some back and forth with through an API to an LLM. And so I just wanted to walk through how to do it, because I think I can do it in 20 minutes and kind of get you all started so that you feel like this is something approachable. So I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to do my personal info at the end. But what we're going to build is a basic chatbot that uses an LLM to formulate responses. If there's time, we'll get into an MCP server that actually connects to Google Calendar and pulls events off of my calendar. And then the technologies I'm using, and I'm just going to walk through why we're using these in the moment. Node.js, I think, is pretty self-explanatory. We're going to use Ollama. Ollama is an engine that you can run on your machine to run LLMs. And the reason I did that was for two reasons. One is I don't want you to feel like you have to go, this is another roadblock that people throw up, go pay for the tokens or whatever that you're using with whatever system. If you want something that looks kind of like Ollama that's out in the cloud, you can use OpenRouter and you can pick and choose your models that way. But if you just want something simple that you can run on your own machine, then I recommend you use Ollama. And then the MCP or model context protocol. And at the end of the day, that's what we're looking for as well. You also get the privacy benefits if you're running locally, right? You're not doing stuff in the cloud. In fact, my employer is always checking to make sure nobody's using our data when we use these services. So just so you're aware. So yeah, this is basically it. The simple chatbot. I think I've already covered this, but we're going to use the Llama 3.21b model. The latest Llama model is 3.3, but to download it was like 40 gigabytes. And it took a while. My machine's a little bit old. It's a 2019 model. And so it took a while to respond. And so I used a smaller model. So to set up, you just go to ollama.com. I downloaded it for Mac OS and installed it. And I think it just opens up and you just drag it into your applications folder. Really simple. So not much there. And then the setup is basically what you would do to set up any node project, right? So you initialize NPM, you install some libraries. So we grabbed Ollama, we grabbed the MCP SDK. I'm using .env and readline. And then you just run Ollama pull to get your model. And then Ollama start with the ampersand. The ampersand makes it run in the background. So if you want to see it doing its thing, you can just do Ollama start, but then you have to open up another terminal to actually run your application. And then down here, I just created 2 files for our bots, and we're off to the races. So again, this is what these things do. So Ollama, like I said, runs the LLM. You've got your model context protocol SDK, which is the MCP client for your MCP server. .env just gave me some environment variables, which I wound up not really needing. And then readline is I'm running this on the command line, right? So I'm not even setting up a complicated web interface to run this. I'm not building a React app. I'm not doing anything. It just runs in the on the command line, and it keeps it really, really simple. So here's where we get into the code, right? So you've got your requires, and then as we get into this, this is just the setup, right? So right here where it says this.olama, it's literally just connecting to the Olama server. This is the default Olama URL. So if you're running it, it runs on that port. The model, you can specify another one in the .env file, but it defaults again to the Llama 3.2. And then I'm keeping track of a conversation history. The last talk, you talked about context, and you can send your conversation history with your request, and it'll give it better context. And then right here, the rest of this is just processing standard in and standard out so that it can actually collect what you're typing in as a query, and then it can send it back. So this is where the rubber meets the road. So the first thing here, it just gives some instructions, and then it just connects to Olama. Where is it? Right here, this.prompt user, that's where I'm actually collecting readline and handling the prompt. And then I just have a real quick Olama connection check, and it literally just sends a basic prompt to Olama and makes sure that it gets a response. So let's jump in here. So this is get the AI response. It just puts this first message in here. And a lot of the prompt engineering that you'll see, a lot of the interactions you see with LLMs, you'll see something like this where you have a system message up front. So mine just says, you're a helpful bot, right? A lot of times what you'll see is if it does something more involved, right? So when we get to the Google Calendar one, it actually tells it, you do calendar stuff, and you need to respond this way, and you need to do these kinds of things. And so that kind of sets the stage for your interactions with your LLM, and it's rather important to get that right. And you can do some back and forth things with it. And then the rest of it is, this is just sending the message to the LLM and then returning a response. A couple of things that you want to know here. First of all, the model is specified every time you call. So you can have Olama running multiple models, and you can determine which one you want to use. The messages, again, is our message history. And then the temperature, I told you this is really basic stuff. So if you've been doing this for a while, you already know these things. So the temperature is basically how random or flavorful, I guess, your response is going to be, right? And so if you're below 1, the closer you get to 0, the more it's going to consistently give you the same thing with the same wording, right? It gets more creative, or more, I don't even know what the right word is, but there's more variability in it if you go above 1 on the temperature. So you can increase that as much as you want, see what you get. I highly recommend that you play with these numbers and see what you're getting and whether you like it. The numPredict number is just the approximate length of the response. And then what we do is, this is the part where it actually captures what the user types in, and then it gets a response from the LLM. So it does check it for the quit message, and then it'll exit. Otherwise, it gets into this, it processes the message, and then it prompts the user again. And so it's a recursive loop. And processing the message, it pushes the message onto the history, and then it gets the AI response, which is on the last slide. And then it puts the response onto the history, and then it logs it back out to the user. So far, so good. Are there any questions so far? So this is essentially, oh, did you have a question? I think you can go as high as you want. I haven't tested that. But yeah, so this is essentially, if you were going to build a chat GPT, I mean, this is basically it, right? And so, as I said, as I was getting started, this is very approachable, very doable, right? If you just want the back and forth with an LLM and you don't need it to do anything else, you have it, right? And what are we talking about here? 50 lines of code. And so don't be intimidated by this. This is pretty approachable stuff. So the next thing that we get into is, okay, well, I want it to do something else, right? I want it to connect to some service. And, so in the case of Google Calendar, we'll see in a minute, it can list my calendars. It can list events. It can list, it can create events. It can do other things, right? It can update events. And so for a long time, the way that this was done was through tools. And Ollama does tools. It doesn't quite natively do MCP, but you'll see in the code in a minute that I kind of hacked that together. But yeah, so we have the MCP, the Model Context Protocol, and it's just kind of this standard way of packaging together. Hey, this is a collection of things that you can do. And then your MCP server is the part that talks to the AI model and does that work, right? Or I guess it talks to the other endpoint, whatever resource. And then your MCP client talks to your LLM and gathers the information from the resource that you're talking to, in this case, Google Calendar, and providing it to the LLM so it can do whatever it needs to do. So how MCP works is, and you'll see this in the code in a minute, but you start up your program and then it starts the MCP server. Okay. And so now you've got your MCP server running, and then it requests the tools that the MCP server provides, right? It says, what can you do? And then when it sends the queries to the LLM, it says, hey, here's the prompt that I got from the user. And it says, here are all the tools. Here are all the things I know how to do. And so when the LLM responds, sometimes it's just going to respond with just text, right? And sometimes it's going to respond and it's going to say, call these tools. All right. And so it says, you know how to do these things? I need you to do these things, right? So if I say, what events do I have this week, right? It's actually going to say, well, call the tool because I don't know. And then it'll call the tool. It may send the information back as another prompt to the LLM, right? So it can format it or do whatever it's going to do. Or sometimes you have something else in your code that formats it. And then it formulates the response and you're good to go. I don't know why I have that arrow there because it doesn't, the MCP server doesn't actually do that. So I had to do a little bit of work in order to make Google Calendar work with the MCP server, right? You can't just turn it on and say, you obviously know who I am, right? And so the first thing that I had to do was I had to go to the Google Cloud Console. I don't have a screenshot of that, but I just created some OAuth credentials, right? So that I could sign in and, get those credentials. I had to get the MCP server, and that's this MCP server right here. And there's some documentation on how to run that. But it's literally just this command, mpx, and then the name of the MCP server. The authentication, I have a script that I ran. I actually had AI help me write the script because that wasn't something that I'm super familiar with. And so it does the OAuth flow in the browser. So I ran the script, clicked the link that the script generated, told it I was okay with it talking to the calendar, and then the script did the rest of the work. And so it put the credentials on my computer, and then the MCP server knows how to access those and can talk to Google Calendar. And then the tool discovery where you just fetch the available calendar tools. So let's get into that a little bit. So one of the things I had to change was the system prompt, right? So before it said, hey, you're friendly. Now it says, you talk to Google Calendar. And so I had to specify if you ask about events or schedule or what's happening, then you've got to use the list events tool, right? And the reason that I put this in was when I initially started building it, it was using the search events tool, and the search events tool was looking for a query where it was saying, it wanted me to be looking for a specific name in the title of the event or things like that, right? It wanted a query string. And if I'm just asking about events or schedule or whatever, what's going on, then I don't have a specific query. I just need to know what's going on. And then the listing available calendars, right? So what calendars can you use? For the rest of it, I had to tell it that time min and time max were in a specific format. I could have given it a string as an example, but I didn't. And then it kept getting confused on the time frame. And I think a lot of that was just down to the fact that I was using the smaller model in Ollama. And so it didn't interpret that quite correctly. And so I was given a little bit of help. And then getting into the MCP, again, what I did is I stored the tools in this calendar tools property on the class. And so then you'll see that the rest of this is all the same, except I tell it that it has the tools when I make the query to the LLM. And then if it comes back and the response message has tool calls on it, then it just executes the tool calls. And that, I have these out of order. So this is where it sets up the MCP server right here. And you can see the command again was npx and then the name of the server. And then I had to tell it where the credentials were and any environment variables I had. And then this is the MCP client that connects. And then this is where it pulls the tools in. So it goes to the MCP client and says, what do you know how to do, right? And then once it knows, then it had to map it into this tool format because that's what the Llama model expects. If you're using Claude or anything from Anthropic are the ones that came up with MCP. And so if you don't have to do this conversion, it just works. But I was using Ollama because I didn't want to pay fees because I wanted to run it on my machine. And so this is what I had to do. Essentially, the only difference is that it's not input schema, it's parameters. And it has a JSON format that it follows. And so then when it gets to call the tools, you can see here it just extracts the name of the tool, the arguments for the tool, and then it just calls MCP call tool, runs the tool, you get a final response, and you're good to go. Any questions? So now you can build a bot, and you can make it do stuff. So at the end of the day, you've got your local AI integration. You can connect to other things. You can call the tools. I didn't show you any error handling. I actually took all that out of the slides because it made them longer and more confusing. But it was just a couple of try-catch loops. It was pretty simple. But yeah, now you can build some AI applications. And so let me open up my terminal here. I don't think that's the right one. Is it going to let me? Oh, there we go. Full screened it. And now I lost my mouse. There we go. All right. You can see I was playing with this before. Oh, I can maybe see my screen down here. All right, so let me just start this again. All right, so let me run this one first. Can you all see that? Do I need to make it bigger? I can't read it, so I'm going to make it bigger. All right, so this is just the regular bot, right? So it's connected to the LLM. It doesn't have the MCP server on it. What should I get my wife for her birthday? I don't know what that was, but I feel special. So you can see it takes a minute and then it responds, right? So tell me a little bit more about your wife's passions, right? So anyway, so I can begin to fill her in. And remember, it has the chat history. And so I can continue to talk to it, and that will remain in the context when it makes the request. And so I don't have to remember, okay, what should I get for my wife's birthday? She likes Disney and this and this and this and this, right? And so I can just keep talking to it. She's a big Disney fan. And then, yeah, it's still slow on this machine, but there you go, right? So a Disney Plus subscription, right? Personalized Disney art. Boy, I've bought all these things. So anyway, so you get the idea, right? And then we have our quit command. And then, it's not, okay, so npx run, what was it, bot? No, it was MCP, that's right. So, oh, that's fun. It was working the other day. Well, maybe I won't. Yeah, it looks like it. Initially, it was going to do something else. Yeah, so you can see I have a setup mcp.sh. That's what I use to actually connect to Google. I don't. It actually pulls it in and starts it on its own in the code. Anyway, are there any other questions? We're about done with time anyway. All right. I hadn't hit a limit, so I don't know. Yeah, you can do that. All right. Well, let me. I guess the last slide is just my information. So I host a JavaScript podcast called JavaScript Jabber. So if you are interested in talking about that, I'm happy to talk to you about that. Yeah, I'm a senior software developer at PrizePicks. And that's it.